Good morning.
How are you today?
Good, and you?
Good. Uh, so, um, wrapping up the end of the semester. May 1st is your last day of class, right? From what Tom said.
Yes.
So, I was looking at my calendar here. Let me pull it back up. And May 1st is on Monday. Let's have these final projects due on April the 24th.
Okay.
Or would the 26th be better for you? That would be the Wednesday before Monday.
The 26th, I guess.
All right. Let me write an announcement real quick. Do you get those announcements in your emails, or do I need to send an email out to the class?
I don't think I get them in my email.
All right, so it'd probably be better to do an email, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then on Monday, May the 1st, I'll let you give your presentation.
Okay.
All right, so what did you think about class the other day?
I think it was good.
All right.
Learned a lot.
Yeah, just kind of looking at the big picture of things, right?
Yes.
Uh, Today I want to talk about a couple other things, and I will test on some of this. Okay, I messed up. Hold on. Jeez, 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 jeez. I did not want to do that. All right, let me find it again. Man, I had this pulled up. Ah, here it is. All right. Okay. Top 10 traits of a successful grazing manager. Now, there was a study done by the Noble Foundation, and Noble Foundation looks a lot at, they do a lot of research on grazing and ranching. And so they did a survey um, and came up with the top 10 traits of successful ranchers and grazing land managers. Now, this is kind of interesting as I read through these 10 traits uh, because, and I don't know how to get this put on, it's copyrighted, so I can't put this on Blackboard. So hopefully people are listening. Uh, so anyway, and if you want to find it, you can find it in Beef Daily magazine. It's on the internet. You can. Uh, it's beefmagazine.com, and it's the top 10 trait or the top traits of successful grazing managers, land successful grazing land managers. So, um, to give you some background information, and they're looking at Texas for this background stuff, okay? Um, but it's the same thing happening in Virginia. Maybe not the same numbers, but the same deal. Um, so, according to recent data, the number of people moving to the southern Great Plains states, like Texas, is more than 1,400 people a day. So in the southern Great Plains, like Texas, Oklahoma, maybe Kansas, uh, parts of New Mexico may fall in there. I'm not for sure if that's considered part of the southern Great Plains or not. 1,400 people a day are moving into the Great Plains, southern Great Plains. So, what does that mean? What's the implications to that?
Uh, there must be jobs and stuff there.
Okay, there must be something attracting them there, right? Jobs, whatever it is. So if people are moving in to the Great Plains are known for what? Ranching and farming, right?
Right.
You got 1,400 people a day moving into them. What's that mean?
More people are getting into farming.
No, not necessarily. Good guess. Thank you for answering. But we're losing farmland. We're losing ranch land. More than 1 acre of farmland is lost per minute. So, what do you think that's doing? How important is that? Do you think the loss of that farmland, 1 acre a minute, it's going to play in sometime in the future? We don't know yet. We don't, it's not happening yet. But you think it's going to play a critical role in food sustainability and in
Yes.
water? Yeah, it
Yes.
will. Um, and because we're losing farmland and losing food production and possibly clean water, uh, and it can play on their national security. If people get hungry, people revolt against their governments, right?
Right.
If you don't agree with me, that's fine. It's a fact. Uh, I used to teach an ag policy class. Food security is a national security issue. If people get hungry, they revolt, um, and can overthrow the government. So um, we're losing farmland. That's happening in Virginia as well. Maybe not at an acre a minute, but it's happening. So it's happening all over the country. And we're getting an increase in population, losing less farmland. It could have big implications in the future. So the other interesting fact, and this is the same for Virginia, I looked it up. I think Virginia, it's 59 years old instead of 58. But, give or take a year or two, the average age of today's agricultural producer is 58 years old. So, we've got farmers. You know, what was the statistic in Tom's class? Less than 3% or 2% of America's population are farmers. They feed the other 98, 99% of America and a lot of the world.
That sounds
Something
about
like
right.
that, right? So, if you take a look at the political things of it, if we're in a democracy, farmers don't have that big of a voice because we're only 2%, maybe 3%, right? So it could get interesting. Now, the survey, they used 14 resource professionals who spent their entire working careers assisting ranchers through good times and bad times. And they came, they're from respected institutions like the Noble Foundation, Texas Christian University Ranch Management, the King Ranch Institute, the Caesar Kleberg Wildlife Research Institute, Texas A&M, and then several private consultants. So, all in all, these combined years of working in the industry for these 14 people that were involved in the survey, more than 469 years of experience. So, the Noble Foundation, based upon their responses, came up with the top 10 traits of successful grazing land managers. And, you know, this I think applies to, it definitely applies to us. It applies to all animal producers. Remember how at the beginning of the semester, or at least when we were talking about forage production, I said we kind of need to, my theory is we need to change our mindset from being cattle producers to grass producers, right?
Yes.
So, so here's the top 10 traits. Number 10, they are cautious risk takers. And what's that mean?
They don't take many risks, or
Okay,
they like
go ahead.
they kind of wait before they take a risk. They look at the situation first.
All right, I'll buy that. Um, let's go into this a little bit more detail. Now, a cautious risk taker, that's someone that has an open mind and they're willing to consider more effective and efficient methods of doing things. They often consider new technologies and they might implement Now, here's where you said, what you're saying. Uh, they might implement a test on a small portion of their operation. They're willing to try new ideas and concepts. They take risks based on knowledge, experience, and sometimes hunches, but they do it on a limited basis. And they rarely risk everything, and they always operate within the safety margin. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So they'll take risks. They have an open mind. They'll try out new things, but they're just going to do it on a small scale to see if it works. And they're not going to buy in fully until it works, but they're going to look at based on their experience and their knowledge and other people's experience. They're going to see if it could have a place on their farm, and if so, they're going to try it out. They're not going to go in full-fledged. It's not going to bankrupt them or hurt them too bad financially if it doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, number 9. They have a willingness to share knowledge. George Bernard Shaw once said, if you have an apple and I have an apple, and we exchange these apples, then you and we still have an apple each, right? But if you have an idea and I have an idea, and we exchange those 2 ideas, then each of us will have 2 ideas. You have your idea and my idea, and I have yours and I have mine. Most of the successful producers often get good ideas from their peers, from other ranchers. They talk to each other, they learn from each other, and a lot of times they gain more satisfaction from seeing others succeed rather than themselves. So they're always talking, and we people make fun of them. How many times do you go to Hardee's? You live in a rural area, a lot of farmers, and you have that old men group down there at Hardee's every morning?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
All right. Some
we
of
have
them,
this old store too.
what's that?
We have this old store right down the road where my grandpa goes, and all his little old men friends sit around a table and just talk.
All right. We have those. I tell you something I found out when I was a county extension agent. And even before I was a county extension agent, but I just had to find out where they all met. Just like those old men meet at Hardee's, farmers do the same thing. Some of those old men are farmers, right?
Yes.
There's a few younger ones mixed in with them, right?
Yes.
Now they'll meet for breakfast or they'll meet for lunch, and they'll sit there and they talk, and they're exchanging ideas of what's working on their farm, what's up with the price of cattle. I first found out about this when I was in Nebraska in grad school. It was Thanksgiving break, and I lived in the dorms. I didn't have, the way my deal was set up. I went to Lincoln at the university I was there from August to December, and then I was at a research station in the western part of the state from the end of the semester there in December until August when fall semester started up. So I wasn't going to rent an apartment and have a year contract and have to pay rent on an apartment I wasn't living in for 8 months, right?
Right.
So I just lived in the dorms. Well, they shut the college down over Thanksgiving break. They shut the dorms down. Everybody had to get out. I was a broke college student. I did not have money to come home. and then turn around and come back, and then turn around and go home for Christmas. So I decided wait to Christmas to go home, and plus it was about a 24-hour drive, and so one of my friends I met says, "Hey Dwayne, why don't you come spend the week with us at the ranch? Have Thanksgiving dinner with us." So I did. What did we do? You know, so I went back to his place. He was out in Holdridge, Nebraska, stayed with his family, and we worked we checked on cattle every day, worked on the farm, worked on the ranch and the farm. The guy, dad raised corn and had a feedlot. The background cattle, he raised wheat, corn. He's one of those guys I told you, depending on the price of corn, he would either feed it out or sell it. He was one of those. Well, that year he bought a bunch of calves. We were grazing them on wheat. He was grazing them on wheat pasture and on his old cornfields. So we'd saddle up, go check cattle every day, and do what needed to be done on the farm for a week. What did we do every day at lunch? We drove into town to this little diner and had lunch. Well, we didn't do it every day. We did it a couple times. He says, "Oh, this is my weekly ritual. I do it twice a week to keep up with everything." Who else was at that diner? Just about, there were a whole bunch of farmers, and they sat around and talked about the price of cattle, price of corn, price of wheat, what the plans were, what they were planning on doing, and bouncing ideas off each other. That stuff happens. It continues on. When I was a county extension agent, I found out where all the farmers met for lunch or breakfast. Different groups. I mean, not all of them met at the same time at the same place. They would, there'd be a group meet for breakfast on Monday mornings at such and such a place. Another group meet for lunch at such and such. Another group meet for lunch. You bet I made my rounds talking to these guys. I'd go have lunch with them. But it was an exchange of ideas. So you have to be willing to share. They show a willingness to share knowledge and get ideas from other farmers. All right, number 8. They have clear, measurable, and attainable objectives. Remember what I said Monday in class? Some of the projects, the rough drafts, they're not talking about their goals. You have to have goals. Remember how we talked about identifying individual animals and keeping records on everything? Keeping records on their animals. You need to keep records on your pastures as well, on forage production. You got to measure. And you have to have goals, and you have to continually get to see where you're at. And I think I made a comment or stated an old saying that says, you can't manage what you can't measure. So you want to manage your cattle properly, you better measure them. You want to manage your forage crop, your forages, and your grasses, you need to measure it. Constantly monitor, keep records, see what's going on year after year. Look at trends. Look what happens in dry years. What happens in wet years. Look at that data and use it in your plans. But you have to measure if you're going to manage. Otherwise, we're just throwing out cattle and hoping for the best. So you need to measure from your available forage to production costs, and you got to measure your costs. That's why I'm throwing that economics in there to get you to think about this stuff. If you don't know what your costs are, it's hard to take advantage of an opportunity because if you don't know that you had an opportunity in the first place. So, for instance, you have a cost of what your cattle cost. You keep good records. You have an idea what you know what it costs you to produce a calf to sell at weaning time, and you put together a projected budget for this year. You have a bunch of calves on the ground, and you have an opportunity to sell those calves today to be delivered after they're weaned for a really good price. Now, and it may not be, you may not get rich, but you're going to cover your cost, your projected cost of production, and you're going to put some money in the bank. Would you do that? You could. If you know your cost, you know what you can sell those calves for and make a little bit of money. Because between now and October, the price could drop, and then you lose money. Or the price may increase. You heard the news this weekend?
No.
Nope. Well, let me tell you what happened. President Trump met with the president of China. And from those talks, so China has banned U.S. beef for over 13 years. From those talks, that guy said he was willing to lift that ban for U.S. beef producers. So when we start talking about China, we're talking about China, Taiwan, Vietnam. I think Vietnam was one of those countries. And that's over, I think they estimated China is one of the largest importers of beef in the world. Can you imagine what it would do to our beef prices if we could tap in on that? If they started importing some from us? Could go up. That's a good thing. It could help our beef producers quite a bit. So, uh, so the price could go up. If you've locked in a price, you may leave some money on the table. But that's okay because you've covered your production costs and you've made a little bit of money because it could go down the other way. A friend of mine, he's my neighbor. He buys a bunch of steers in the spring, and he's a backgrounder. He buys steers, actually buys them in the fall, winters them, grazes them all summer, and then sells them. About 4 years ago, and he always, locked in his price. So he made money, but, he covered his cost and he made a little bit of money and he went on to operate the next year. Well, a few years ago, cattle took a big price hike. He locked in his price and sold his cattle, very happy, or, pre-sold them. They would be delivered on 4 or 5 months down the road. He was very happy with his price. Price of cattle went up. It continued to go up. And he delivered his cattle. But had he sold them on the market or sold them when they were ready to be, sold them instead of selling them 5 or 6 months earlier, he'd have made about $50,000 to $80,000 more. He said he could have bought a new tractor. So what did he do the next year? I'm going to take that risk. Price plummeted right after he got his cattle bought. They continued to plummet. He lost about $250,000 the following year. Big hit. If he didn't have another job, he would be in financial trouble. Big time. So, knowing your cost of production is going to open up some opportunities for you. You'll know if there's an opportunity there. You can lock in the price and make a little bit of money. Just like you had an opportunity to work Dollar Tree, get paid a certain wage. But, you could have took another job, say like, I don't know, maybe commission sales, where you go out, you get, you work hard, you make sales, you get a lot of commission, you make a lot of money. But if nobody buys anything, you don't make any money. And you might have lost money because you've got your own vehicle and you've got your own expenses doing that job. So you take you're a cautious risk taker. You took the sure job, the sure paycheck, right? So simple deal. You need to have clear, measurable, and attainable goals, and keep and measure everything. Keep records. Number 7, you have to have a conservation ethic. What that means, or let me tell you, you ever heard of a guy named Aldo Leopold? I think he founded
Yeah.
the
I don't think I've heard of him.
All right. Well, I think he founded the Sierra Club, big conservationist. And he said back in 1949, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. Successful ranch managers want to leave their properties for the next generation better than when they received it. And this requires an inner conviction to be a responsible caretaker for the land and all of its parts. So that rings pretty true in agriculture, right? Farmers pass on that farm to their kids, and a lot of times it's in better shape than what it was when they got it. I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer that farmers and ranchers are your first environmentalists. We've made some mistakes, but we've learned from them. We've got to protect our environment, protect our soils and waters, and farmers and ranchers understand this to the fullest concept. Their livelihood depends on it. Number 6, they think in the big picture. Big picture thinkers don't get caught up in the weeds, meaning they focus on the big picture outcomes and they don't get derailed by minor setbacks. Where other people find problems, they try to find opportunities and structure their business to decrease risk and be positioned to capitalize on opportunities in turbulent conditions. They understand how all the pieces of their operation are interrelated, and they find leverage to change the system for the better of the entire operation. So this goes back to their project. Is nutrition related to reproduction?
Yes.
Okay. Is genetics related to reproduction and nutrition?
Yes.
Is reproduction, genetics, and nutrition related to your goals as an operator?
Yes.
Is all that related to the health of your cattle?
Yes.
Now, is all this stuff related to your forage production? How much grass you
Yes.
can grow? And all of this is related economically, right?
Yes.
See the big picture?
Yes.
How all these different parts go into managing. little parts of your farm. But you got to see the big picture and how they all interrelate. Hay production, cost of production for your cattle, forage production for the grass and your hay, market conditions, it all interrelates. Another trait of successful farmers and ranchers, they're lifelong learners. Does your education end when you graduate?
No.
No. High school graduation, what's another name for it? And college graduation.
Some people call it a promotion ceremony.
What?
A promotional ceremony.
I hadn't heard the promotional. I've heard commencement.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, what's commencement mean? Beginning,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You're beginning a new stage of your life. You're also beginning to learn more things. Successful farmers and ranchers stay up to date with new techniques and technologies. They're not afraid to cautiously try them. Remember, go back to number 10 with cautious risk takers. They keep updated by staying active in professional development and associations. What are some of those in your area? Do you have a local
Uh,
cattlemen's association?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with those.
You do. You do have a local cattlemen's association. And if you go there, you join it, I don't know, 50, maybe 20, $50 a year. Get a meal. They bring in people to speak from forage production to marketing. They help you know, they work a lot with marketing their cattle. What about extension programs? Usually the extension agent works really heavily with the with the cattle association. Um, so you have a lot of extension programming you can go to. Uh, you can join the Virginia Cattlemen's Association, the National Cattlemen's Beef Cattle Association. Uh, all sorts of associations and opportunities, professional associations to join and opportunities to learn. Successful farmers and ranchers are lifelong learners. They go to these field days on other people's farms or research stations. They go to extension meetings. They're involved in their cattlemen's association or whatever pertains to them. You know, one thing about it, they understand. You know, these successful farmers are lifelong learners. They understand they can learn something from anyone. And they often learn the most valuable lessons from unlikely situations. You know what impresses me about Keith? And Keith's a businessman, right? From our
Right.
HR class.
He always does a lot of research.
He does. He reads the Wall Street Journal. One of the newspaper comes out every week. Latest stuff on business and stuff going on. I was at a meeting one time hearing this guy spoke, and he said, "You know what impressed me?" He said, "I went to a feedlot the other day, or might not have been a feedlot, might have been to a ranch, and there on that rancher's desk was the Wall Street Journal. Here's a guy in agriculture reading the Wall Street Journal. You don't see that very often. but he's trying to learn business techniques, trying to get a feel of the markets and stuff like that. Pretty, you can learn stuff in the most unlikely places if you have an open mind and you can get one of those ideas and cautiously try it out on your farm. Um, Another number four is having an inquisitive and passionate mind. If you ranch long enough, somebody's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. If you train horses long enough or show horses, they're going to tell you you're doing it wrong. No matter what you do, you're going to have your naysayers, and they're going to tell you you're doing it wrong, right?
All right.
Inquisitive and passionate ranchers are often the innovation are often the innovators in the crowd. They ask questions and they continually evaluate everything. When I was a county extension agent, I was on the Farm Bureau board there in Wythe County. And there was a guy on that board, his name was Jim Huffman. No, it's John Huffman. They're brothers. They have a dairy farm. And John thinks in numbers. And you talking about asking some deep, thought-provoking questions regarding business and numbers. That guy would ask them right off the top of his head. Now these two brothers, Jim and John, have a really top-notch dairy farm, and they kind of went out a little bit from traditional dairy farming, and they bought a bottling plant. And so they pasteurize their milk, they bottle it, and they sell it directly to grocery stores. They make ice cream and butter as well. Um, but they have one of the top Jersey herds in the world. They sell bulls all over the world. Select Sires, ABS, these semen companies come and buy their bulls. Or they've bought a lot of their bulls because their herd is that good. Very, very inquisitive. They're very passionate about what they do. Uh, and they're very observant with everything going on. Number three, they understand ecological principles. Most successful farmers and ranchers observe the climate, animal, and plant interactions. They make management decisions that capitalize on those conditions. They understand the real purpose of roots versus leaves and where the plant makes its food. You may not know the name of all the plants, but they understand plant selectivity by their animals, and they understand the different production that different plants do. You know, like cattle will gain better on orchard grass than they will on pheasant. They understand that the soils are the building blocks for their plants and therefore for their farm. So they understand about soils. And they know that soils are full of life and that biology drives most systems such as the nutrient cycle, water cycle, etc. So, John's plant science class, pretty important. Understanding that why roots, understanding that roots versus leaves deal, understanding where that growth point is in the plant, why that's important, why you don't want to graze below it, and the soils class he teaches, that's the building blocks for your grass and your forages. And you have to understand these things to be a good forage manager. That's why we graze grass, cool season grasses, to no less than 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches. Don't want to go below 3 inches. Well, maybe if it's bluegrass, maybe about 3 inches, but it's not a very tall grass. But fescue, orchard grass, timothy, you don't go low. Uh, in your roots system, you want to, you know, I've always heard it said that the root system's as tall as the plant. So when we take that plant down and we keep it down, like in a continuous grazing situation, those roots shrink up. We just go in there and hit it once. You know, we have 8 inches of growth, top growth. We got 8 inches of root growth below it. So we go in there and hit it once, move our cattle off, it'll grow back pretty quick and come in there and graze again. We don't damage that root system. And so it's important to understand all these interrelationships. Number two, they manage the ranch as a business. Again, another reason why I made you do the economics deal on this project. It is a business. And we talked a little bit about that Monday, with sustainable agriculture, at least what I thought it was. It's economically sustainable. So the successful managers make the decisions based on the physiological needs of vegetation, the nutritional and habitat requirements of the animals, and the financial realities of the ranching business enterprise. They scrutinize every dollar they spend. They eliminate unnecessary and non-profitable inputs. And they completely understand how profitability often comes down to how you control your costs. And the number one trait of successful farmers and ranchers, grazers, whatever you want to put in there, they're flexible and adaptive. Successful ranchers are continually updating plans based on new knowledge. Many times the reason for their success is that is they are not rigidly managing. They're not micromanaging. They keep the big goals in mind and they're going for the big goals. What's your most critical decision on your animal farm? What do you think that most critical decision is?
Can you repeat that again? You were breaking up.
I'm sorry. What is the most critical decision on your farm? For your cattle, sheep, horses, whatever. What's the critical decision?
Um, like what you're gonna feed them.
Uh, that's critical, but that's not going to be your most critical. Or I mean, that's important. But your critical decision is your stocking rate. How many animals can you run on your farm? We want to maximize our profits per acre, right? Or we want to optimize that. Your most critical decision as an animal producer is how many animals, or what is my stocking rate? How many animals can I run on my farm? Now, is that going to change from year to year?
Yes.
Yes. If we have a wet year and a cool, wet summer, you think you can run, if you have a normal summer, okay, say you run 50 head of cattle on your property in a normal year. If it's dry and hot, can you still run that same number, that same 50 head?
No, you'll have less.
Yeah, you're going to run out of grass. What if it's cooler and wetter? Can you
You
run
might come
more or
on
less?
more.
Yeah, you can run more. Do we have a normal year every year?
No.
No, there's no normal year. I mean, we look at it, you know, what's their rainfall? What's their normal rainfall? What's their normal temperature for the year? Uh, but it's all dependent. Sometimes we'll get a lot of rain and then it's dry for several months and then we get a lot more rain. Or sometimes we don't get that rain and we end up dry. Or sometimes we'll get a heck of a lot of snow in the wintertime and not much rain in the summertime. And it's still dry. Although we may be ahead on moisture, but it came at the wrong time of the month, wrong time of the year. Everything changes. What we can do is look at long range forecasts. They can kind of tell us whether it's expected to be hot and dry or wet and mild, and then we hope they're right, and we can make some decisions based on that with our stocking rate. But our stocking rate's going to be changing year to year. Uh, so, um, most successful managers are continually updating their plans based on new knowledge. Many times, the reason for their success is that they are not rigidly managing. Stocking rates are the most critical decision a producer has to make, and this decision should be flexible with weather and markets. Many of the biggest ranch failures, ecologically and economically, have come from having rigid stocking rates despite changing forage conditions. Successful grazing operators or land managers understand that there are no easy answers, no simple solutions, and no cookbook recipes for success. There's no magic, no wonder grass, no magic breed, or no magic cross of cattle, and there's no magic herbicide to get rid of all the weeds and leave only the grass. They succeed because they are flexible and they adapt to the changing conditions. Concentrating on, if you concentrate on your farm on developing any single trait on this list, it's a move in the right direction. Uh, but the best land managers, grazing land managers, they possess some aspect of all those traits that we discussed. So, if you're running beef cows, brood cows, and let's get back to stocking rates. Uh, it's going to be hard in a dry, hot year to sell some of those cows, right? You may just, because they got calves on them, you may have to, but if you got money, you may just buy hay to feed them, right? Uh,
Right.
and if you know it's going to be a hot, dry year, what are some things you could do? If the price, it's coming. You've seen the long range weather forecast. You may want to sell off some of those older cows that's calved or getting ready to calve in the spring when those prices are high for cow calf pairs. And then, you know, buy back a few extra replacements. Or maybe cut down your herd a little bit so that in those hot, dry years, you don't have to sell your cow herd. But in a wet year, you may want to come in there with some stockers. Buy you a few stockers. Buy you a few stocker cattle to help manage that forage so it doesn't get ahead of you. That makes sense? You can do
Yes.
that. You can run your stockers through there first, then run your cows in there. Let your stockers go in there and get the best of the stuff. In fact, what you could do, it's kind of unorthodox, but instead of buying 4 or 5 weight calves in the spring, if you're expecting a wet year, go in there and buy 6 or 7 weight cattle, bigger calves, and get all the weight you can put on them and sell them in the middle of summer before the grass quits growing, or right as it quits growing. So then you got enough grass for your cows. You took off that big spring growth, you're able to manage it, and then you're going to move those stockers off of your farm and save the rest of it for your cows with the summer slump, and then you got your fall regrowth. You could do that, or you could incorporate sheep with your cattle. Uh, there's different things you can do. If you run stockers, you just look long range weather forecast and make adjustments from how many you buy. Excuse me, or go rent more land. Uh, so you have to be flexible with everything you do with these things. That stocking rate's critical. If you're pushing it to the max and you have a dry year, you're hurting. And through rotational grazing, there's one guy I worked for when I was in college, Tim Sutton, great manager. He had, I was really my first exposure to some rotational grazing. The farm he was managing, he had a bunch of sheep and some cows. I guess he probably had about 100 cows. It was a pretty good sized farm, and about 300 or 400 ewes. And the year after I worked for him, or a couple years after I worked for him, I had worked for him for a summer. Uh, he We had a really dry year. I was worried about him. I called him and said, "Hey, how you doing?" Or talked to him a little bit. And said, "Man, how you getting along this dry year?" He says, "Dwayne, you know what's saving me this year without me having to sell out my herd is my rotational grazing. That's saving because I had to cut it down. I just go in there and start strip grazing, make the grass last longer, hoping we get some rain. But because that's the only thing that's really saved me was how I have my farm all cut up into different paddocks." And he said, "I got along real well." He said, "My neighbors had to trim down their herd or start feeding hay to buy." So I'm a big proponent in rotational grazing. How big you want to make your paddocks? Hey, that's dependent on you, and you can change it. You make paddocks where you can move them you know, move them about once a week, or you can go in there, and if you do it right, say you plan on doing it once a week, and then something changes, or you need smaller paddocks or whatever's going on, you can go in there, use electric fence and cut that in half, cut it in a quarter, get them to where you can move them every day, whatever you got to do. Electric fence is wonderful. Temporary electric fence. It provides so much flexibility. But you have to be flexible. You have to be adaptable. Any questions?
I can't think of any.
All right. One other thing I want to talk about um, today, and we didn't discuss this in nutrition, um, but right now it's opportune time to talk about this. Is a metabolic disease called grass tetany. Tetany. It has several other names. One of them is called wheatgrass poisoning. We don't hear it called that here in Virginia, or at least southwestern Virginia, because we don't raise a lot of wheat. Uh, it's also, uh, what are some other names for it? I'm trying to think of the other names for this. Um, oh, it's also called grass staggers. Um, I think the real name for it is magnesemia. What it is, grass tetany, it's a deficiency in the mineral magnesium. And whether there's a deficiency or not, the magnesium is unavailable to those cows in the quantities that they require, so therefore you have a deficiency. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have typically in the springtime you have heavy lactating cows. You have rapid growth of grass. And we know in lactating cows all of our requirements go up. We have rapidly growing grass, and that grass is a little weak when it's growing first thing in the springtime. It kind of goes right through them. Doesn't have, it is growing so fast that it's high in nutrients, but it's just a lot of water. And anyway, we get a deficiency in magnesium. Uh, may not be deficient, but where that grass is growing so fast, it may not be utilized. The cow's magnesium requirements go up. What we do know for certain is that older cows are more susceptible to it than young cows. And they think that's because of magnesium. It's harder for that cow to pull magnesium out of their bones to meet those demands. But basically, uh, it happens in the springtime and you have early lactation cows with that fast growing grass. And a lot of times you just go out there and you find a dead cow. Uh, if you see it, you don't have a whole lot of time to respond. They'll act funny. Their ears will be up. They'll be twitching. skin twitches, muscle twitches. They're very clumsy. They'll walk, fall down, get up, fall down. They're not very coordinated. And to treat it, you infuse them with magnesium. You can either do an IV solution of magnesium, or they now have a gel you can use. You do that IV deal, man. You can give them that magnesium, and boom, they're up and going like they never were sick. Like a miracle cure. To prevent grass technique with their mineral supplementation, you need a high mag mineral. Uh, they'll make minerals with high magnesium content in there, and you need to give that to them. We would start doing that in the spring, even before they calve, get those reserves built up, get it in their system good, and we continued it until we turned them out on even probably up to about June when that real big fast growth, the grass was over. Uh, we went back to regular mineral. Some people feed the high mag year round. Uh, so you see problems with it in the spring. Another time you see a problem with it is when we come out of a drought situation. If it's been really hot and dry and that grass is quit growing, and then we get some cool weather, we get a lot of rain, and that grass starts growing really fast again, then we'll run back into we can run into that problem in the fall, especially you have a fall calving herd and you have that fall regrowth. There is that chance of grass tetany. So you can just buy the high mag mineral for that, the high magnesium mineral. And the other thing you want to do too is to increase your calcium and phosphorus supplementation in the springtime, uh, because you know you just don't want to feed a trace mineral salt in the spring on these lactating cows. We want to feed calcium, phosphorus, and high mag, because that calcium in that milk is drawing a lot of stuff, a lot of the calcium out of their bones and muscles, and they can get what's called milk fever from that calcium deficiency. Very similar, the same symptoms of grass tetany as for milk fever. You can't, if you walked up on a cow demonstrating those symptoms, you don't know whether she has a magnesium deficiency or a calcium deficiency. So you treat her for both. And usually she gets up and walks away. You treat for one and she gets up and walks away, you're all right. If she doesn't get up and walk away, you better be pumping the other one with magnesium and calcium. Usually you just treat them for both and go on. Give them some of that magnesium gel and give them some calcium gel, or infuse them both. If you do an IV infusion of calcium, an IV infusion of magnesium. So very similar, very similar, or the same symptoms that you just can't tell which one it is. And you don't have time to run blood work. If you do, she's dead. So you just treat them for both. But it can be prevented with proper mineral supplementation. So be aware of the grass tetany. Uh, so uh, anything, any questions on it?
No.
Oh, as the grass grows, you have a high potassium levels. Uh, the high potassium levels are effectively diluted, so hungry stock. Let's see. Calcium binds it up. Risk grass tetany. Risk grass tetany increases when animals in late pregnancy and early lactation graze pastures with a potassium to magnesium imbalance. That's it. Especially in late winter and early spring. application of nitrogen fertilizer applied in the spring can also increase this risk. So your balance of potassium and magnesium, it's out of whack in those fast growing grasses. So uh, it gets that messed up. Uh, all right, I guess we're about out of time. That's about all I had today. So, well, that is all I had today. I wanted to talk about those two articles. Thought they were interesting though. The successful managers. So as y'all are wrapping up your final projects, if you have any questions, please call me. And for your HR class, Jasmine, you need to get the finish those assignments before May 1st.
I haven't done. I just have to type them up on the computer and send them to you.
Great, good deal. All right, y'all have a good day. Or you have a good
You
day.
too.